What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Week 9 waiver wire ads. We're back to 4 teams on bye after just 2 last week. So we've got the Falcons, the Bengals, the Rams, and the Saints. All on bye, don't have any of those players. With the waiver wire being as bad as it is at this point in the season, we're more looking for players that have potential rather than guys you can pick up and start right away. But of course, I'll go over both kinds of players. Remember, I always record this prior to the Monday night game, so if anything big happens there, not a big deal. I'll just put a pinned comment in the comment section that has the timestamps as well as any updates. And if you're watching this a few minutes after it's released, the timestamps are in the description. So, let's start things off the same way we have over the last month with Mark Walton. His value in the public is going to depend a little bit on what happens in tonight's game, but assuming that he doesn't get hurt or they don't do something really unexpected with his touches, then I'd expect him to be getting around 13 to 15 relatively ineffective touches this week. It's a pretty bad matchup on the road against the Steelers, probably going to lose. So don't hate on him too much if he has a bad game. It's really not a great week for him. But we knew going into this week that Drake was going to get traded. He didn't travel with the team. He was already on the trade block. He was going to a different team. So they've already benched Ballage for Mark Walton, and he's already been getting in this 13 to 15 touch range. So we're going to see what happens tonight, but we should expect him to continue seeing around 15 touches a week, and with Drake gone, he's going to see an increased role in the receiving game. That is not a workload you can find on free agency at this point in the season. So there's no way that he should be 11% owned. That's kind of ridiculous. We've been talking about him every week over this past month, so hopefully you guys already have him. Rex Burkhead is also worth an ad if he's available. He was relatively involved before his foot injury, but then he finally made it back this past week, and the easy portion of the Patriots' schedule is now over. From weeks 9 through 14, they play actual opponents, which means they'll be shifting towards game scripts that favor White and Burkhead ahead of Sony Michel. Michel had 8 targets in the 3 weeks that Burkhead was inactive, yet just 1 total target in the 5 games where Burkhead has played this season. It's a big reason I told you to sell high on Sony Michel because Burkhead was out and these workloads were not what he's going to see towards the end of the season. Burkhead is the one that they would rather throw the ball to, and he's used enough in all areas of the field to be someone you should own. He's not really someone I want to go out, start in my flex this week, but it's possible if you need a spot start down the stretch, whether it's through a bye or an injury or just underperforming players, Burkhead could be getting around 10 or so touches a week when he's fully back, and about half of those are going to be high value touches. You know, they're not just 10 3-yard carries. Some of these are high value carries, and he's going to have a good chance to score touchdowns. So I think he's a solid piece to add, but not someone you're going out and claiming. I, of course, need to do my 15 seconds on Alexander Mattison every single week, over 10 touches per game in his last 4 weeks, and he will be a high-end running back 1 if Cook were to ever go down, yet he's only 17% owned, and that should be 100%. That's really it for running backs. Not typically a whole lot of options once we hit week 9, but there's really no names on there that we're going to want to go after. It is possible that there's a trade sometime later today or sometime on Tuesday that opens up value at the running back position. If that happens, then like I said at the start of this video, just go down to the pinned comment that has all the timestamps. I'm going to update that comment if there are any trades that affect things. I don't know of any trades right now that would affect the running back position. It's still possible we see a wide receiver trade, but if something unexpected happens, just check the comment. For wide receiver, we're going to start off with Josh Goedert. For sure, not someone you need to claim, but he's been dropped in a ton of leagues after being placed on the IR, but the injury doesn't look bad at all, and it's likely that he gets released from the Patriots, so he could go to a team that really needs a wide receiver. There are a lot of teams that could pick him up where he won't really have that much value. So if he goes to one of those teams, you can just drop him after that. But since he's on the IR, if you're not using that spot, I mean, why not just pick him up and throw him in your IR if you're not using it? I know a lot of people are using that spot or don't have it. So if you don't have an IR spot, maybe don't add Josh Gordon. But if you're not using it, he's worth an add in the off chance that he goes to a team that really needs to use a wide receiver and they actually give him snaps. It's possible it doesn't happen, but worth an add more in deeper leagues. Demaryius Thomas, he had another solid game this week, 5 receptions for 63 yards. Even though Darnold has looked terrible, the Jets have the league's easiest remaining schedule with upcoming matchups against Miami, the Giants, Washington, Oakland, and then Miami again. His snap share took a slight dip this week, but he was still the top wide receiver on the team. So if Sam can step it up, and especially if Robbie Anderson were to get traded, then he's got some value down the stretch. Keep an eye on the Dolphins wide receivers tonight. It's definitely not a good matchup. I don't expect them to dominate or anything, but they should be owned in more leagues than they are. And if Williams continues to see this 6, 7, 8, 9 targets a game, then he should be owned in far more than 9% of leagues. So if you watch tonight's game and he's got another 10 target game, honestly, I talk about him every week, but he should be owned in far more than 9% of leagues. Taylor Gabriel, also a guy that should be owned in more leagues. He's dropped to just 6% owned after missing some time due to injury, but his snap share went up to around 73% last week. And if Trubisky can figure out how to play football again, then Gabriel could be useful this week against the Eagles. Josh Reynolds is also worth mentioning, although it's also worth talking about that the Rams are going on bye, and it's really not ideal to add players who are going to be on bye right away. But if you've got, say, a 7 or 8 player bench, like a really deep bench, I think it's worth adding him. Cooks suffered another concussion this week, and as we've seen with Sterling Shepard, teams are really careful about players who have suffered more than one concussion in a season. So it's absolutely possible that Cooks is held out after the bye, in which case Reynolds will need to be owned in all formats. If you want to just wait a week, just see how Cooks is recovering, by all means do that. Just thought it'd be worth mentioning so you guys can keep him on your radar. And then the last names are Auden Tate and Alex Erickson. Tate is 34% owned. Erickson is only 2% owned. I really don't know if Green's going to play another snap for the Bengals this season. They're 0-8. And he's on an expiring contract. So I have no idea why they haven't traded him yet. But, this is the same organization that hired Hugh Jackson. So I probably shouldn't be that surprised. But there's just no way they bring him back at this point. All that's going to do is hurt their chances of getting the top pick and add injury risk to him. He's a guy that wants a new contract. Why would he want to go out there and play? It just makes no sense. So it's possible he gets traded today. So if you're already listening to it and he's been traded, yeah, that was a huge possibility. Or he gets traded on Tuesday. If neither of those happen, I guess there's a chance he returns, but I just don't see it happening. Either way, I do think Tate and Erickson should be owned in the majority of leagues, not 34% and 2%, but they are a team like the Rams who are going on bye. So you probably don't need to add them right now, but if you have the room on your bench, I would. At tight end, the same people I talked about last week are true for tight ends this week. We've got Dallas Goedert and Jonnu Smith. Once Walker was looking likely to miss, anyone who needed a tight end should have picked up Jonnu Smith, especially in one of the best matchups for a tight end. It was almost too easy. We don't know how long Walker is going to be out for this week, and when he comes back, Smith obviously has a lot less value, but he's a low tight end one while Walker is out, so if it looks like he's going to miss another week, Jonnu Smith needs to be owned. If you're someone who doesn't want to wait for injuries and you want someone now, I guess Dallas Goedert would be your top option. He's somehow still available in 75% of leagues, and that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Not only is he a high-end 2 while he's healthy and Ertz is playing, but he's a mid-range tight end 1 if Ertz gets hurt or if Ertz gets traded, because he's been involved in a few different trade rumors as well. I'm really not sure they're gonna trade him. They love using 12 personnel, and that just goes away if they trade him away, so it's not like they have to do so, but if they want help at defense, if they want help at the cornerback position to try and make a Super Bowl run, I guess it could make sense. But either way, Goedert's out there for 70-75% of snaps every week. He's being used close to the goal line, so you can get by with starting him regardless of an injury or trade with Ertz. But if either of those two things happen, then oh my goodness, Goedert has a ton of upside. Time to talk about some quarterback streamers for week 9. The top option, in my opinion, is Jameis Winston at Seattle. Seattle is a pretty mediocre pass defense. They're not terrible, but they're not all that good. And all the Bucs know how to do is pass the ball. So it's a nice matchup for them. You've got Stafford at Oakland. Oakland's been crushed by quarterbacks recently. And also a pretty similar situation. Oakland is pretty strong against the run, but bad against the pass. And without Kerryon Johnson, the Lions are expected to lean more pass heavy than running the ball because they have no idea how to run the ball. So it's a perfect matchup for them. Sam Darnold at Miami. Yes, Sam looks bad right now, but this is Miami we're talking about, and I'm sure you and I could put up fantasy points against them. Then you've got Rivers versus the Packers. We just saw Matt Moore have a solid game against the Packers, and with the Chargers' offensive line issues, they're having a tough time running the ball. It's not all Melvin Gordon's fault. Yes, it's fun to hate on their decision to keep Gordon, but at the end of the day, they're not really helping them all that much with the offensive line, so they should lean on Rivers more in this one, especially as underdogs. For defenses, this week is actually really gross for streaming options. The top plays are already owned in most leagues, and a good amount of the free agent options are either on bye or in a tough spot. My top ad would be the Broncos at home versus the Browns. We saw the sort of self-destruction that the Browns are capable of on Sunday, so the Broncos could absolutely post a nice score at home, and they have been better as of late. I'd also consider Seattle at home versus Tampa Bay. I know I said Winston's a top streaming option, but you could start Winston at quarterback and Seattle's defense, because Winston is not immune to multiple pick sixes, and if that happens, then he's going to be throwing every single play, and he'll probably have a good game as well. It's not a defense that I really ever want to use, but like I said, it's Jameis Winston, and they're home favorites, so he's not afraid to pass in the quadruple coverage, so they're a solid option. The Cowboys are also viable, taking on the Giants. They're not home favorites, but they'll be road favorites, and they do have at least 2 sacks in 5 straight weeks. We've got the Jets at Miami is probably the last option I'd really look at. Anyone playing Miami is viable, but the Jets really aren't that good of a defense, so I'm not expecting them to put up typical streaming defense versus Miami games. They're on the road. It's not that big of a spread. I think right now it's only like 3.5 points, and they're not that good, but they're obviously viable because they're playing Miami. So let's put these guys in order of waiver priority. So the order for claiming players is Mark Walton, Dallas Goedert. That's it, at least for right now, unless I update something in the pinned comment because of a trade or an injury. Right now, it's only Walton and Dallas Goedert as players I'd put a claim in for. The order for adding players is Mattison, the Bengals wide receivers, with my preference probably being Auden Tate, but I don't think it's that big of a gap. Quarterback streaming options if you need one. Defense streaming options if you need one. Then Jonnu Smith. If we get word that Walker is out, I probably wouldn't add him unless I think Walker is going to be out. Then Rex Burkhead, the Dolphins wide receivers, with Williams being my preferred option. We've got Demaryius Thomas, Josh Gordon, Taylor Gabriel, and Josh Reynolds, with the last 4 probably being only adds if you have a pretty deep bench. So that is it for the Week 9 waiver wire video. Again, If anything happens on Monday or Tuesday as far as trades, I'm going to update the pinned comment, so look for that. If you see I didn't mention something that you think I should have mentioned, I'll be doing trade targets next, followed by start-sit videos later in the week, so be on the lookout for both of those. But that's the end of this one. I hope you all did enjoy. If you did, how about hitting the like button? And if you're new here, how about subscribing to the channel? But thanks for watching.